Hey everyone, it's Movie Lover 120 here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review, and this is going to be for my first horror movie review in kind of a bit of a while. This is actually one I've been long waiting for. Yes, this review is for none other than John Carpenter's 1982 classic, The Thing. Oh yeah. I absolutely adore this film. It's a masterpiece in cinema, one of the biggest sci-fi movies, horror films of our generation. I recommend you don't watch this review yet and go watch this movie first before checking out this review, because it is a classic in film history. Like, pe- people like this is technically kind of like a horror remake of The Thing from Another World, which was a film in the 50s, but it had its own adjustments to make the film more nightmarish from the 1980s. And believe it or not, when this movie was first released on June 25th, 1982, it was heavily panned by critics and filmgoers, and it bombed at the box office since critics at the time regarded it as just a brainless gore fest, and at the time was Carpenter's worst film. And it was and also, it didn't really help that it was released 2 weeks after the smash hit family friendly alien movie E.T. Either. However, over time, like with Blade Runner released the same year, it eventually would get re examined and slowly became a massive cult classic and is now regarded one of the best films of all time. Yeah, a lot of iconic films from the 80s were actually not very well received when they first came out. Like, The Shining got horrible reviews when it first came out, but now it's gotten critical praise and is easily considered the best horror film of all time. Empire Strikes Back got really mixed reactions from critics, but audiences were a little more positive to it, but now it's regarded one of the best sequels of all time. So yeah, you know how it is. But anyway, let's get on what this movie's about. Well, set in remote Antarctica, a group of American research scientists are disturbed at their base camp by a helicopter shooting at a sled dog. When they take in the dog, it brutally attacks both human beings and canines in the camp, and they discover that the beast can assume the shape of its victims. A resourceful helicopter pilot and the camp doctor lead the camp in a desperate, gory battle against a vicious creature before it picks them all off one by one. Yeah. So, this movie actually also stars some talented actors like Kurt Russell and Keith David. But let's get on with the greatness of this film and why it is so great. Because, like I said, it manages to be a very brilliant remake of The Thing from Another World while having its own adjustments to make the film more nightmarish. So yeah, this to me is easily the best horror remake of all time. Easily into some very brilliant, very convincing makeup designs and amazing practical effects for the things, even. Like, the amount of work they really put into this movie really is very terrific. I'll say, much like John Carpenter's other film Halloween and Escape from New York and Christine, John Carpenter is shown to have amazing skills as a director. In fact, he's probably one of the most greatest directors in horror. He has directed some very great horror movies like with Halloween and The Fog and this. He's a very great director. I'll say easily one of my favorite directors. And over 90% of the movie has no soundtrack, and so this gives it a more spooky, claustrophobic feeling. And the parts that do have music are amazingly fit the tone of the film very well, especially the theme music. I'll demonstrate what this is. Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much the soundtrack for the film. So yeah, and it's a very iconic, very great soundtrack from Edward Winchester. Yeah, also there's even many unexpected twists and turns, especially when it comes to finding out which character is actually a thing too. Some unforgettable, interesting characters, especially R.J. McElroy and his mission to uncover the truth behind the strange happenings in Antarctica. Some perfectly well done cinematography. The acting is even wonderful, especially from Kurt Russell as R.J. McElroy. and some tons of memorable scenes, such as when Windows sees Bane being assimilated by a thing, Dr. Cooper's death, and the famous blood test scene. So yeah. And I think if I had any complaints, well, I don't really have complaints, because I don't think there's really anything bad with this movie. I mean, now there's eventually, around several years later, John Carpenter wanted to make a sequel, but Universal didn't allow it, and so we instead got a prequel in 2011 that's also, believe it or not, called The Thing, which is basically a real dumpster fire. Yeah, all I will say about the 2011 prequel is it sucks. The end. Don't even watch it. Plus, it barely even feels like a prequel. It feels more like a remake, really. And speaking of remake, the worst company in horror, Blumhouse, is remaking this movie. Yeah. They're giving this movie an actual remake, and I know, after their Black Christmas remake, it's so going to be shit. Can't wait for that to fail miserably. Because I would really like to not. Because their Black Christmas remake was horrible, so will this. They're all like, but they also made that Halloween movie 2018. Guys, that's not a remake. That was a direct sequel. So it doesn't count as a remake or a reboot. And at least it stayed faithful and actually was made by most of the crew members behind the original film. And it was actually written by John Carpenter. So it was at least written by the guy who did the original Halloween. But enough about that. So anyway, that's pretty much it for my review of John Carpenter's 1982 hit The Ring. Definitely, like I said, please check this movie out. One of the greatest horror films of all time, one of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time. Probably I think the second best sci-fi horror film behind Alien. And easily just one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Just one of the best films of this generation, that's all I'm going to say about it. And here's how I'm going to rank it. I am going to give The Thing a 10 out of 10. And there we go. Finally did the best horror film. Best sci-fi horror film, one I've been long waiting to review. Finally felt good to do that. Well, but anyway, that will be it for this review. Thank you all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, then don't forget to like and subscribe to Movie Lover 120.